My name is Margaret, and I'm 62 years old. 7 years ago, I died during a routine surgery. I was gone for what the doctors said was 8 minutes. But in those 8 minutes, I was shown something that has followed me every single day since. I was shown who will never enter heaven, and when I saw the faces, I realized I didn't understand judgment at all. I need to tell you this while I still can. Before that day, my life was unremarkable in the best way possible. I worked as a librarian for 34 years in a small town in Ohio. I had raised 2 daughters, buried a husband I loved, and attended church most Sundays. I wasn't perfect, but I believed I was decent. I believed that counted for something. The surgery was supposed to be simple, a gallbladder removal. Routine, they said. I remember joking with the anesthesiologist about how I'd never been put under before. He smiled and told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7, and then I was somewhere else. There was no tunnel, no light pulling me forward. I simply became aware that I was standing. The operating room was gone. I wasn't in my body anymore, or at least not the one lying on that table. I could see my hands, but they felt more like the idea of hands. Everything felt more like idea than matter. The space around me was vast and still. Not dark, not bright, just present. There was no sound, but I wasn't alone. I turned and he was there. I don't know how I knew it was Jesus. There was no introduction, no voice from the clouds, but the knowing was instant and absolute, the way you know your own name. He stood a few feet from me, calm and silent. His face was kind, but his eyes held everything. Every lie I'd ever told, every moment I'd looked away, every time I'd chosen comfort over truth. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at me. And in that look, I understood that nothing could be hidden here. Not one thing. Then, quietly, he said, "I want to show you something." That was all. No explanation. No warning. And then we were standing somewhere else. It looked like a hallway, long and endless. But it wasn't a hallway in any building I'd ever seen. The walls weren't solid. They shimmered, like they were made of something between glass and water. And on the other side of those walls, I could see people, thousands of them, maybe more. They were standing in lines, moving slowly forward, and at the front of each line was a gate, tall, radiant, beautiful beyond words. I knew without being told that it was the gate to heaven. But not everyone was going through. Jesus stood beside me, his hands folded, watching. I looked at him, confused, and he said, "Watch." A man stepped forward, middle-aged, well-dressed, confident. He approached the gate and stopped. There was no visible guard, no angel blocking the way, but he couldn't move forward. He stood there, face hardening, and then he turned and walked back into the crowd. He didn't argue. He didn't weep. He just knew. I whispered, "Why?" Jesus didn't answer right away. He let me watch. A woman came next, younger, maybe in her 40s. She looked kind. She smiled as she approached. But when she reached the gate, her smile faded. She stood there for a long moment, staring at something I couldn't see. Then she covered her face with her hands and turned away. I felt my chest tighten. "What did they do?" I asked. Jesus looked at me and his voice was soft. "It's not always what they did." I didn't understand. I wanted to. I wanted him to explain, to give me a list, to tell me exactly what disqualified someone so I could make sure I wasn't on it. But he didn't. He just said, "Keep watching." More people came. Some turned away immediately. Others stood at the gate silent before walking back. A few wept, but most didn't. It was the silence that disturbed me most. They knew. Every single one of them knew why they couldn't enter. Then I saw someone I recognized. It was a man from my town. I won't say his name, but I knew him. He'd been a deacon at my church for years. He led Bible studies. He volunteered at the food bank every Saturday. I'd seen him pray with people in the parking lot after service, tears in his eyes, his hands on their shoulders. and now he stood at the gate, frozen. I stepped forward without thinking. Him? I said aloud. He can't be. He gave his whole life to the church. Jesus turned to me and his expression didn't change. Did he give his life to me? The question hung in the air. I didn't know how to answer it. The man stood there a moment longer, then lowered his head and turned away. I felt something crack inside me. I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking now. He did everything right. He served. He prayed. He performed, Jesus said quietly. He built a reputation. He wanted to be known as righteous, but he never wanted to be known by me. I stared at the man as he disappeared into the crowd. But he believed in you, I said. He believed I existed, Jesus said. That's not the same. More people came forward. A young woman who I could tell had been beautiful in life. She carried herself with grace, but when she reached the gate, she stopped and closed her eyes. After a moment, she whispered something I couldn't hear and walked away. I looked at Jesus. Her? He said nothing for a moment. Then, she spent her whole life trying to be enough. For her parents, for men, for herself. She never once asked me what I thought she was worth. But she wasn't cruel, I said. She didn't hurt anyone. She hurt herself, he said, every day. And when I reached for her, she turned away. She said she wasn't ready. She said she would come to me later, when she was better. But later never came. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Then I saw a man I knew had been wealthy. Very wealthy. I'd read about him in the paper once. He donated millions to charity, built schools, funded hospitals. He stood at the gate, shoulders straight, and waited. But the gate didn't open. His face changed. Confusion, then anger, then something close to panic. He looked around as if searching for someone to explain, but there was no one. Just silence. Finally, he turned and walked away, his hands clenched into fists. I turned to Jesus, my voice barely a whisper. He gave so much. He gave what he didn't need, Jesus said, and he made sure everyone knew about it. He wanted a legacy. He got one, but it wasn't with me. I felt sick. A teenage boy came next. Thin, nervous, eyes darting around like he was afraid of being seen. He approached the gate slowly, almost reluctantly. When he reached it, he stopped and stared at the ground. He stood there for a long time. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. What did he do? I asked. Jesus' voice was quieter now. He believed he wasn't enough. And he never asked me if that was true. I looked at Jesus, and for the first time I saw something in his face that looked like grief. He thought I wouldn't want him, Jesus said. So he never came. I watched more people. Hundreds of them. Some I understood, some I didn't. But the pattern became clear. It wasn't the criminals who were turned away. It wasn't the addicts, or the broken, or the ashamed. It was the ones who had convinced themselves they didn't need him. The ones who had spent their lives building something, reputation, wealth, righteousness, independence, and had forgotten that none of it could open the gate. The ones who had heard his voice and said, later. The ones who believed in him but never trusted him. The ones who loved the idea of heaven but never loved him. And then he turned to me. Do you understand now? He asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him I got it, that I'd learned the lesson, that I was different from them. But I couldn't, because I saw myself in every single one of them. I saw the deacon who performed faith instead of living it. I saw the woman who never believed she was enough. I saw the man who gave but never surrendered. I saw the boy who walked away because he thought he wasn't wanted. I had been all of them. And I realized standing there that I didn't know if I would have made it through that gate. Jesus stepped closer. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight I'll never forget. Many will come to me on that day and say, Lord, didn't we do this in your name? Didn't we serve? Didn't we believe? And I will say to them, I never knew you. He paused. It's not about what you did. It's about whether you let me in. I felt tears on my face, though I didn't remember starting to cry. Was I going to make it? I whispered. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, That's why I'm sending you back. I woke up in the recovery room. A nurse was leaning over me checking my vitals. My chest ached. My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. The doctor came in later and told me I'd had a complication. My heart had stopped. They'd brought me back. You're lucky, he said. I didn't feel lucky. For weeks, I couldn't talk about it. I went back to work. I smiled at my daughters. I went to church and sat in the same pew I always sat in. But I couldn't stop seeing those faces. I couldn't stop thinking about the deacon, the woman, the boy. I couldn't stop thinking about the gate, and I couldn't stop asking myself the same question. If I had died that day, really died, would I have made it through? I don't have an answer to that, not one I'm comfortable with. But I know this. I'm not the same person I was before. I don't go through the motions anymore. I don't pray because I'm supposed to. I don't serve because it looks good. I do it because I finally understand what he was trying to show me. Heaven isn't a reward for good behavior. It's not a prize for checking the right boxes. It's a relationship. And if you spend your whole life avoiding that relationship, hiding from it, substituting it, convincing yourself you'll get to it later, then when you stand at that gate, you'll realize you never actually knew him. And he never knew you. I wasn't sent back with comfort. I was sent back with knowledge, and that knowledge still weighs on me. Because I've seen who doesn't make it through, and some of them looked a lot like me.